another Xerneas versus Shadow Rider Calyrex matchup, but with different Pokemon to support both of those restricteds. And you gotta go ahead and take a look at Renzo's team and definitely see that you've got the Mienshao once again. You've got the Stack Attack. There's actually a Stack Attack on both sides, Aaron. Oh no.
We'll see if that ends up coming out. You know, I think for both players, or for Renzo for sure, you know, the Stack Attack obviously can be very handy into Xerneas. And Sejun is one of the most interesting Xerneas teams I think I've ever seen, right? He's got Dragonite, Crocodile, Torkoal. There aren't really any classic Xerneas supporters. No Incineroar, no Amoonguss, no Volcarona, no Rillaboom, right? Those are all like the things that you typically expect to see with the Xerneas. So really excited to see what like Dragonite, Torkoal, and Crocodile specifically are going to do for Sejun here. But Renzo's team, you know, once again, very much about supporting the Calyrex Shadow Rider. But unlike Arash's team, which we saw in the beginning of the tournament, he does have a little bit more bulk in the Stack Attack. That could be really handy because I think, as we saw in the first game with Arash's hyper offensive Calyrex Shadow Rider team, you know, not having any bulk can really cost you when you don't have safe switch-ins, for example. And so, once again, I mean, so much about the Xerneas is how you get it in, whether or not you set up safely. And Sejun has multiple answers to deal with Renzo's Stack Attacka. But for Renzo, it's about, you know, positioning your Stack Attacka into a point where you can maybe handle Xerneas. If you can knock out Sejun's Indeedee early, that will make it a lot easier for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just kind of looking at how you're going to have to position both of these Pokemon. And it's interesting as well because you take a look at Renzo's team and you notice there isn't really a whole lot of speed control options available in terms of like a Whimsicott Tailwind like we got a chance to see in our previous match. So I'm very curious to see how you really have trained the Pokemon in order to make sure that those Astral Barrages go off and you are finding full value from your restricted Pokemon. But Aaron, it's the last match we're covering. For us, let's go ahead and jump right into it. This is the last winners round 1 match, and I can't wait to see how it goes between Renzo Navarro and Sejun Park.
Here we go. It's gonna be Crocodile. All right,
Ooh.
Really excited to see that Pokemon out. And hey, if there's one Pokemon that's really good into Renzo's lead, Crocodile might just be it, right? It's got the ground and the dark typing, so this Regieleki really doesn't do anything into Crocodile. And you also have dark type attacks to threaten with the Calyrex Shadow Rider, so really great lead here by Sejun, I think, because, you know, typically Calyrex Shadow Riders don't really have a way to deal with Crocodile, especially if you're running. But hey, this is Leaf Storm!
Oh no! What?
Just as I was saying, I might have spoken too soon.
Oh my gosh! No way! Is Renzo going for it right now?
It looks like it, and it just gets it all.
Oh my gosh, well that's one way to really help deal with the Crocodile, especially when it's packing so much pressure from that dark typing into that Shadow Rider Calyrex and also the ground type as well for dealing with that Regieleki. Now that Regieleki is also super safe, and you can see that it was actually Choice Scarf on that Shadow Rider Calyrex. I can't imagine any other way that that would be able to outspeed that Regieleki there.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and the Choice Scarf is confirmed there. I wonder if Sejun is running Choice Scarf Crocodile himself, specifically as a counter into the Calyrex Shadow Rider, right? Like, we've seen how relevant Choice Scarf has been. Every team we've covered basically has had one really interesting Choice Scarf user, and, you know, if Sejun's Crocodile does outspeed the Calyrex Shadow Rider there, that is just such a strong start to the game for Sejun, where it's like, all right, you get a free knockout and you get the Xerneas set up, right? But Renzo here is able to get a quick knockout and able to chip away at the Xerneas and get Incineroar in to put on pressure with Fake Out, right? By getting rid of Crocodile, you've also eliminated one of the bigger threats to the Stack Attacka that Renzo has in the back. That Stack Attacka going to be really essential in dealing with Xerneas in the late game. So Choice Scarf, Leaf Storm, Calyrex, Shadow Rider, not something you see very frequently, but, you know, I think Renzo probably brought it into this tournament because he was probably expecting a lot of Calyrex Shadow Riders, right? And how many Calyrex Shadow Rider players run Choice Scarf? Very few. And if you can just win that trade-off and KO opposing Calyrex Shadow Riders and outspeed them, gives you a huge lead, right? So now Renzo is in a slightly weird spot where, like, Sejun did still activate the Xerneas. You're probably going to want to switch out this Calyrex, but at the same time, do you really want to give up either, you know, Pokemon in the back? Like, I think Renzo here also might be willing to just sacrifice Calyrex so that you get that free switch in, specifically in a Stack Attack. And it looks like that is what he's opting to go for right now.
Yeah, and you have had some really interesting options on the Incineroar. You could try to taunt the Indeedee, maybe just make sure that it can't go for something like a follow me anymore, or just any of those supportive options that Indeedee does have access to. But I definitely think that it's tough because you don't necessarily want your Shadow Rider Calyrex to just be locked into Leaf Storm, especially knowing that secondary effect of that move does drop your special attack by 2 stages. So it does make it so difficult for you to actually get damage off with that Calyrex. And so we're just going to see a double swap here, Aaron. That Stakataka and that Regieleki both coming out here.
Yeah, with this, you are at risk of taking a lot of damage from Xerneas, right? Yes, Stakataka resists Fairy, but a Helping Hand + 2 Dazzling Gleam is still certainly going to hurt. And wow, oh my goodness. I mean, that did 65% of damage basically around to the Stakataka. So that was the main thing here, right? What's interesting is because you do have the Choice Scarf on Calyrex, I'm curious if it actually outspeeds Xerneas at +2. If so, then you can get a really strong Expanding Force off. However, the Xerneas did get the Geomancy boost, so if the Xerneas is able to hang on, that's obviously really big. Another big question I have here is whether or not the Stakataka has Wide Guard. We can see that it doesn't, but Sejun might still want to respect that option. And it's Psyshock here. Okay.
Wow. Okay. So Leaf Storm really and Psyshock.
Yeah.
This could be absolutely huge.
The big thing here is basically, does the Indeedee go for a Follow Me? Oh, it's actually Protect.
Okay, so we don't get a chance to see what the speed tiers offer for both of these Pokemon quite yet, but Indeedee just goes for an Expanding Force here. No Follow Me, no Helping Hand, no support. So that's Brits brought so low, but it's able to get off the Trick Room here.
So it gets the Trick Room off, hanging out with just a sliver of HP. Now, it's Rock Slide feels like the best play. You get a flinch chance as well. Sejun going for the Protector, so doesn't, just feign to a potential Psyshock. But now what's interesting is if you're Rock Sliding and Sejun reads into it, you don't go for a Follow Me. You have 2 options here. I think one is to just Follow Me and Dazzling Gleam and just hope that, Stakataka doesn't have Wide Guard here. The alternative is to just go for attacks with both, right? But I think here, if Sejun doesn't get flinched and you go for Follow Me, the other question is whether or not Xerneas actually outspeeds under Trick Room. I think it will outspeed the Calyrex, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, we're going to find out very soon here. Stakataka goes for the Rock Slide, though, just to be able to work around the Follow Me coming out from the Indeedee, and I really, really like that play here. Psyshock, though, coming out from the Calyrex will go first before the Xerneas under Trick Room, so that tells us a little bit about how these Pokemon may be trained, and especially with those items as well. And so the Dazzling Gleam going to do enough to knock out Calyrex and Stakataka here, and Renzo is in a bit of a predicament. So you've only got Incineroar left.
Yeah, so Sejun should take this first game, but this was a really interesting breakdown of how strong Xerneas can be, right? Yes, Sejun lost the Pokemon and took 50% of damage on Xerneas on turn 1, but what's so essential is that Sejun had the Indeedee to come in next to it, right? This is why redirection is so important next to Xerneas. That's why you see Indeedee, Amoonguss, Volcarona next to it, because that allows you to just protect it, right? Even if Xerneas is damaged, well, if you can't actually do the last bit of damage to KO it, then it doesn't matter, right? 1 HP feels like infinite HP if you're actually hanging around. So at this point, Follow Me is very safe. Renzo, I think, went for the right play there with the Rock Slide and the Psyshock. And as you mentioned, as we see, even with the Choice Scarf, the Xerneas is probably just max speed here. So it is able to actually just outspeed Calyrex Shadow Rider with that Geomancy. So it's a really important thing that you called out. And the other thing here is basically Renzo had the opportunity to maybe just play towards the Stakataka endgame, right? He switched it in and just took too much damage with it. So there was the opportunity to potentially sacrifice something, get the Stakataka in safely, and then go from there. The issue is it just took so much damage on the switch in that it doesn't really get to, be bulky against Xerneas, because at the end of the day, Dragonite actually makes an appearance as well.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the main thing here is that Stakataka still takes a lot of damage from a +2 Xerneas.
Yeah, and Xerneas just being able to deal with so much of that pressure coming out from all of the Pokemon on Renzo's side of the field. Even just I'm still in shock about how much damage that Stakataka actually took from that Xerneas, right? So that's definitely something that you kind of have to look at here. And I actually really like this from Renzo. Going ahead and going for the Flare Blitz, you get a chance to see a little bit of information about what this Dragonite might be running. So I really do like that. Maybe Renzo can use the reveal of the Life Orb as well as that dual Wing Beat on the Dragonite to inform their decision about how to potentially play this game number 2.
That's a great point, honestly. Even just seeing that there's a Life Orb there is a big piece of information, right? And so it gives you some sense of how Dragonite is built. One of the things is that Dragonite's not a very common Pokemon at all, so getting any nugget of information honestly goes a long way. So I think that's a really, really good point. But, you know, going into that last game, that was really dynamic, right? Like Sejun, in the end, was just able to get the Xerneas set up, and that's what ended up mattering. So I think for game 2, like I'd like to see Renzo maybe try to play around Stakataka a little bit more. The main question is whether or not you can actually deny the Geomancy setup. I'm not 100% confident on it with the way Renzo's team is constructed. So then it's like, okay, if you're accepting that Geomancy is going off, you have to play, you have to have more offense under Trick Room, basically, and distribute a little bit more damage before Trick Room is up, or be more healthy when Trick Room is up, especially with that Stakataka.
Yeah, I definitely think that the positioning of the Stakataka there, and then maybe even just like the fact that we did actually see the Incineroar running Taunt, maybe that could come into play a little bit here. Just being able to help shed off a lot of the support on the Indeedee or something like that. So just making sure that that Incineroar and that Stakataka are in a bit more of a prime position. But let's go ahead and get into game number 2, see all the adjustments that are going to be made from Renzo, and just see how this next one plays out. Sejun in this best of 3 is going to be up 1-0. Oh, wow. Crocodile and Dragonite?
These, if you ask me, Rosemary, like, what is the lead I would not have expected in this tournament? This is it. I certainly never would have anticipated this at all, but this is Sejun Park we're talking about, right? Like, you won Worlds in 2014 with Pachirisu, so really, really interesting lead here. Now, the thing is, Sejun knows that this Calyrex Shadow Rider is Choice Scarf, so you obviously are a little bit nervous about the Leaf Storm coming out immediately, right? And so, another thing to note, by the way, is that Renzo actually doesn't have, like, Psychic Ray on his team. That explains why he has Psyshock, right? Instead of running, like, Astral Barrage here. But Sejun in a weird spot where it's like, do you just trade off the Crocodile again? Or maybe do you make the read here? Like, Renzo, you know, maybe doesn't go for the Leaf Storm because you know you guys both know basically how that played out last time around. So maybe
you revealed it already.
Anyway. Yeah, and he stays in and no Leaf Storm. There we go.
Yeah, the Astral Barrage is going to be able to connect onto both Pokemon here, bringing, you know, Dragonite to about half, and we will see the Thunderbolt, though, from the Regieleki is going to be enough to be able to knock out that Dragonite here. So we're not going to see a whole lot of this Dragonite at the moment, but Throat Chop here coming out from that Crocodile. Maybe that was what Sejun was going for in that game number 1, but now we finally get a chance to see that revealed here, and that Shadow Rider Calyrex goes down.
Yeah, and I think that's a strong play, right? I think from Sejun's end, he probably just doubled up into Calyrex to try to pick up a KO onto it. Turn 1, get rid of the restricted Pokemon immediately. Now, what makes this a little bit tricky is that, of course, Renzo has this Rillaboom that's got that priority Grassy Glide. And it was great for Renzo to eliminate the Dragonite first, because Dragonite obviously is a very good answer into Rillaboom specifically. So now you've gotten rid of probably what's the best Rillaboom answer. If Sejun's last Pokemon is that Indeedee, well, suddenly you have 3 Pokemon that, you know, all take neutral damage from Grass-type attacks. And so now this next turn, Sejun in kind of a weird spot, right? Where it's like you maybe want to consider switching out the Crocodile into Indeedee if Indeedee is your last one. But at the same time, that's such an obvious play. Like maybe you read into Renzo not going for a Fake Out or Grassy Glide. As you can see, he's opting for the Wood Hammer here. So you could stay in with the Crocodile and actually just double up onto Rillaboom. But Sejun is going to make the switch.
Oh my god, the switch happens here. The final Pokemon is going to be that Indeedee, and I always thought it was a little awkward that Sejun couldn't necessarily go for a super safe play, which, you know, would have been the Geomancy to really help set up for the end game, because we didn't actually get a chance to see the redirection here. But a Protect, that is definitely something that is going to help out here, as Renzo did double target into that Xerneas.
That's a fantastic Protect. Right now, you have the opportunity to just go for a relatively safe Follow Me and Geomancy. And so, yeah, Renzo can slow down the Xerneas with an Electro Web. The U-turn here is actually a really big deal as well, because if Rillaboom doesn't have U-turn, you basically have to hard switch or basically let Psychic Terrain stay up by staying in, right? But U-turn not only allows you to deal damage, but it also allows you to pivot out. So I think Renzo's play of Electro Web plus U-turn here is super safe. From Sejun's end, you could go for the safe Follow Me plus Geomancy, or if you want to get a little bit ambitious, you actually could just click Expanding Force right now. And the main thing here is this time around, it's not like Renzo's just switched in a Stack Attacker and taken 70% of damage onto it, right? And so I think that was a great turn from both players that last turn, right? If Sejun gets greedy, doesn't go for follow me there, Renzo punishes it super, super heavily.
Absolutely. We are going to see the Electro Web come out here. Going to be able to drop the speed of that Indeedee as well as that Xerneas, maybe just kind of anticipating that the Geomancy is going to come out here. We do see the U-turn. Oh, that's going to be enough to knock out the Indeedee here. So no more redirection, no more helping hand on the field now for Sejun to be able to boost up those powerful attacks coming out. And guess what? Renzo gets a switch in now from that pivot, from the U-turn into that Stack Attacker. Oh man, this is a much better position for that Stack Attacker. No, but the Xerneas goes for a Moon Blast here. Wow. Oh my gosh. The crit too.
Gets the crit. Yeah. So the thing is, now Sejun does get that switch in back out into the Crocodile. That's obviously pretty handy. You get an Intimidate off. But the scary thing is now Rillaboom is in a really prime position to just close the game with a bunch of Grassy Glides, right? Like, well, the main thing here is that Xerneas is still, like, somewhat healthy, and the Regieleki obviously cannot hit the Crocodile at all, but I like the decision to just go for a Thunderbolt here. And I also like the decision to not switch out the Stack Attacker. You could very easily lose the game if you just lose Rillaboom right now. So let's see what comes out. Wow.
Oh, okay, Xerneas going to be able to hang on here, and the high horsepower, though, from this Crocodile is going to do enough to knock out the Stack Attacker. So even though it went for the Trick Room here, I feel like it's almost a little bit better that it didn't actually go off. But Regieleki, oh, he gets one hit knocked out here.
And now you've set yourself up in a position to just win the game with Rillaboom, right? Like, that's why Renzo was willing to just get damage and damage onto the Xerneas. It doesn't matter if Xerneas Geomancies, because Rillaboom will just outspeed you with that Grassy Glide. So what was so critical here was the Rillaboom. Like, terrain wars have been a really big deal, as we've seen, right? It feels like so far throughout the first 4 games of this tournament, it's the kind of Choice Scarf. Where's the Choice Scarf user? And then also, how are players managing terrain, especially in the kind of Psychic terrain versus Grassy terrain interaction? Renzo now knows, Sejun is locked into that high horsepower, so you always just target the Xerneas. Xerneas basically needs like 1 billion protects, and for Rillaboom, like high horsepower still just doesn't even do enough damage, honestly. So we should see Renzo close out the second game, but really fun adjustments. And I think like Renzo was just off to a pretty good start where like Sejun traded to knock out Calyrex Shadow Rider, but the main thing is I never really got the Geomancy off with Xerneas, and that made the game significantly more difficult because you're not able to just chip away or KO everything instantly.
Yeah, for sure. And so, you can just continue to click Grassy Glide here, which is what we're absolutely going to see from Renzo. Sejun could even try to go for the double protect here, but I still don't think that's enough because look how little that high horsepower did in that last turn. Oh, he's going to go for it, though, but it fails. Rillaboom just going to be able to go for the Grassy Glide, be able to clean up the rest of the HP on that Xerneas. And even though Crocodile gets off one more attack here with that high horsepower, Rillaboom is still in such a fantastic position, especially knowing that you can just Grassy Glide into the Crocodile next turn.
Exactly. So I think at this point, thinking about game 3 from both players' perspectives, like for Sejun, is Dragonite plus Crocodile the best lead, right? It feels like that was the adjustment, but it didn't really do enough. But I guess what's tricky here is, like, I think it's just leading Crocodile's a little bit scary, and it's like Calyrex Shadow Rider, as you can see, it isn't really, it's very important to the team, but Renzo has plenty of offense from Stack Attacker and Rillaboom as well, right? And so I think like Sejun probably can't lose as many resources as he does on turn 1 if he's not getting a Geomancy off, right? Losing a Pokemon to get the knockout on Calyrex, that's okay, but the main thing here is how do you position to get that Geomancy off? And a lot of it, once again, is maintaining control of the terrain, right? I guess what's tricky for Sejun here is like, can you really bring out the Torkoal or your own Stack Attacker? Maybe, but the problem is then you have to, if you just set up, Trick Room, then your opponent's Stack Attacker is going to thrive, and suddenly your Xerneas is super useless. So it is definitely a really, really thin margin to kind of, try to navigate through.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of the matches that we've had today, that initial turn, the leads have been so important to get right.
Exactly.
And that's just kind of like a staple in the Series 10 format. It's all about the leads. It's all about positioning, pivoting, and also, of course, making sure that you have enough offensive pressure. So let's go ahead and get right into this third and final game of this match between Renzo and Sejun. I can't wait to see how this plays out because I'm not expecting that we're going to see Crocodile and Dragonite again. Ah, a Crocodile and Xerneas. Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, similar spot here, and this worked out for Sejun last time where, you know, you do just go for willing to take up the Leaf Storm and, you know, set up Trick Room here. Or not Trick Room, Geomancy, excuse me. What makes this so sad for Crocodile is like your Choice Scarf, but you still don't outspeed either of these Pokemon right now. So it's like, you'd rather have another item. But the main thing here on turn 1 is, does Renzo just go for the Leaf Storm again? Because you could read into Crocodile switching out. So, you know, one option to go for here is, yeah, like Electro Web and then actually like Psyshock into Xerneas. But looks like Renzo's content just going for Leaf Storm here. So Sejun has the opportunity to potentially conserve this Crocodile and actually switch it out immediately turn 1 into something like that NDD or even the potential 4th Pokemon. So I'll see if Sejun's willing to just take that same trade, because I feel like Renzo in game 1 wasn't even in a terrible position, but then just took too much damage with the Stack Attacka. So, you know, you could play out the game in the same way and just like try to maintain your Stack Attacka and leave it a little bit healthier. But I think Sejun here probably willing to just go for the same turn 1 as he did in that last game, even knowing like the Calyrex's Choice Scarf here. So we'll see. Yep, stays in.
Oh, no switch out here. So the Leaf Storm, as we saw in game number 1, going to be plenty to be able to clean up this Crocodile. And yes, Calyrex is going to drop a special attack, but Renzo is still in a position where I feel like you could just switch it out, potentially. But you do have that Grim Neigh special attack boost, so you're only at -1 at this point. We are going to see the Electro Web now single target attack into the Xerneas here, dropping its speed. So you would only be at +1 after this Geomancy here.
And that's a pretty big deal, actually, right? Because suddenly at +1, well, you're going up against a Calyrex Shadow Rider with Choice Scarf, you're not going to outspeed that anymore. So last time around, Renzo went for the Volt Switch. This time around, it's Electro Web, and I like that decision a lot, right? Because being able to outspeed the Xerneas is a really, really big deal. And so, yeah, this next turn is what's going to be a little bit awkward for Renzo, right? Because it's like, okay, well, your Calyrex is locked into Leaf Storm. You're probably going to want to contemplate a switch out. And then we're in a similar spot. It's like, do you switch in the Stack Attack and just take a Helping Hand Dazzling Gleam, right? And like take 70% of damage. You have to be a little bit scared of that. But what makes this a little bit trickier now, first of all, Sejun doesn't know Renzo's full moveset on the Calyrex Shadow Rider. So I think one thing he's thinking is, oh, wow, I'm really nervous about expanding Force, right, from Calyrex. I don't want to bring in Indity, set up Psychic Terrain, let Renzo switch out Calyrex, have it back in, and then just outspeed me and click Expanding Force. That could be a little bit scary. And so that's exactly why he brings in the Dragonite here instead of that Indity first.
Yeah, that's such a good point there, because terrain control is so important. We saw the Expanding Force and another Shadow Rider Calyrex today, which is very, very common to see. But as you had astutely pointed out, Aaron, Renzo doesn't have the ability to set Psychic Terrain. So that's why we see the Psyshock on this Shadow Rider Calyrex instead, which I also think is very, very smart to be able to have on the team. But, you know, I'm just kind of looking at how Renzo can kind of position in the face of this Dragonite as well as this Xerneas that is Geomancy boosted now. Oh, this is so tough. Do you really switch in the Stack Attacka here?
Yeah, I think the tricky thing here is every Pokemon for Renzo is really solid, but he's willing to conserve that Calyrex this time around because you got that Electro Web on the Xerneas, right? So you can see Xerneas at +1 doesn't actually outspeed. Oh, and the Thunderbolt Paralysis on Dragonite. Wow.
Yeah, so the Dazzling Gleam is going to do a lot. Obviously, it's going to be able to knock out that Regieleki. Didn't do nearly as much to the Stack Attacka this time around, but Fire Punch now coming out from Dragonite here. Okay, just going to be some neutral damage, but that's still putting that Stack Attacka into a precarious position where Renzo isn't necessarily safe to go for the Trick Room anymore, and you're probably not getting off Gyro Ball either.
Yeah, I mean, what's so tricky here is, like, you got the Electro Web off, so the Calyrex now should outspeed the Xerneas. But does that matter, right? Like, I think basically if you're Renzo right now, it feels like you need a critical hit onto Xerneas, because otherwise Xerneas is just going to survive and just go for a Dazzling Gleam. I guess one thing is that Sejun might be a little bit nervous about something like a Wide Guard from Stack Attacka, because Stack Attacka hasn't revealed its full set yet. But I think Renzo here is basically really praying for a critical hit onto Xerneas. If you don't get it, it feels like Sejun might be able to just win the game this turn. So it feels like it boils down to this turn. Let's see how it plays out. The Paralysis is also a little bit scary to deal with, but the main thing here for Xerneas is avoiding a crit and actually getting your attack off here.
We're about to find out here. Sejun definitely taking some time to think through his moves, because this is a very critical point in the matchup. Xerneas, you know, does it go for the Dazzling Gleam here to be able to get that spread damage, or are they worried about the wide guard potentially coming out from a Stakataka. Goes ahead and removes the Dragonite, brings out the Indeedee here, which is a very risky play to make because I feel like Sejun doesn't know right now that Expanding Force is not on the Shadow Rider Calyrex. But we do see the Astral Barrage. It's not going to affect the Indeedee, but it's time to see whether or not this critical hit, if it's going to be a critical hit, will be able to knock out the Xerneas. Oh my gosh, a critical hit!
Oh my goodness. I mean, Renzo like really going for like the one play there, right? But that's a heartbreaker for Sejun, right? And that's like the downside of getting Xerneas set up. And one single crit can, really just turn everything and completely swing the tides of the battle. Like, one thing to note is that, Renzo put himself in a position to get that crit. If you didn't Electro Web turn with Regieleki, you actually just get swept by the Xerneas anyway. But, I mean, it really felt like Sejun had the game won if the critical hit didn't happen there, especially because the Stakataka opted to go for, didn't even try to Trick Room in that position, right? So that's like if you knock out the Calyrex there, even if you're Moonblasting, well, then the end game is Rillaboom Stakataka against Dragonite plus the Indeedee. And so, I mean, that's such a big critical hit, and I think that will probably allow Renzo to just win the game because obviously at this point you just don't have enough damage output from your Sejun. But I mean, that is sometimes the heartbreak of using Geomancy with Xerneas. Your boosts can, basically get mitigated by a critical hit. And this was, it's not what you like to see, but Renzo basically went for exactly what he needed to that turn.
Oh, for sure. Wow. And also resetting the terrain here now with bringing out Rillaboom so that Indeedee cannot go for a double target Expanding Force, I think is very, very smart. And we are going to see the Astral Barrage, obviously not going to be able to affect the Indeedee here, but it will be able to hit the Dragonite, and it is going to do enough to knock it out here. Oh my gosh, and Indeedee at 1 HP against the world right now. Definitely, congratulations to Renzo. It's not quite over yet. Expanding Force obviously going to be able to target into the Calyrex, but it's just not going to be enough here. So congratulations to Renzo for taking this match 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really phenomenal set, though, and I think, this one definitely feels like a heartbreaker for Sejun because he had set the Xerneas up, was in a prime position to sweep, and I think one thing to note here is, one, Stakataka doesn't have wide guard, so it's harder to deal with the Xerneas, and two, Xerneas is just that strong, right? Like, Dazzling Gleam just one-shots so many non-restricted Pokemon if you get the Geomancy set up, and so in the end, it really felt like, I like the adjustment Sejun made, right? He just went back to what he did in that first game, got the Xerneas safely set up. I love the decision to bring the Dragonite in first over the Indeedee as well, and in the end, it really, just came down to a critical hit, but that's Pokemon, right?